Okay, welcome to the Art of Blocking, a short video, should be fairly short because the Art of Blocking is a reasonably straightforward one, about how to block in Blood Bowl, how to make the most of your blocks. The Art of Blocking was a classic article by Doubleskulls that can still be found on the naf.net, and this is just a sort of visual representation of it really for those who prefer YouTube. The Art of Blocking is probably about 20 years old now, so going to try and update it a little bit, add in a few bits maybe, but give the same flavour. So let's look at the basics of blocking. First up, I've got the figures from the box. Red ones are blitzers, yellow ones are catchers, white ones are throwers, black ones are linemen, and that's on the human team. So I haven't done anything to them, just kept them the blue figures from the box, just given them coloured bases. Similarly for the orcs, got brown for the black orcs, got white for the throwers, got red for the blitzers, which is the same as the humans, and I've got black for the linemen. I haven't got all the players out because you don't need them all, because I'm just going to show off a few things. So let's start from the complete basics. If two same strength players are hitting each other, you just roll one dice. I should explain about the dice I'm using. Those who have just bought the box set, these dice will look a little bit different. These are the classic 3rd edition block dice that we used up to about a month ago, 2 months ago now. So that one is the POW symbol, that's POW exclamation mark, that's your push, that's the both down, and that is the skull. Again, starting with the basics, if you roll that one, you push the opponent back and knock them over. If you roll that one, dodge POW it's usually called, or defender stumbles, then you get knocked back and you fall over unless you've got dodge. That one, you push back. That one, both players fall over unless each individual player has got the block skill. And that one means that the attacker falls over and has to take an armor roll. Whenever you get knocked over on a block, you have to take an armor roll. So, two players are the same strength hitting each other. You can see down here these different cards that come in the box. So these are two strength players. So if the orc was blocking the human, you would just roll one dice and see what happened. Both down, both players have got block, nothing happens. Okay. If a black orc was hitting a blitzer, I've got a little skill ring on there, just take that one off. So if the black orc was hitting the blitzer, the black orc has got strength 4, the blitzer has got strength 3, so the black orc would roll 2 dice and would choose which result to use. If you were more than twice as strong, so let's bring in the troll. I've got a troll here, he's a nasty looking man. So the troll is going to hit the catcher, so the troll has got strength 5, the catcher's got strength 2, that would mean you're more than twice as strong, so you would roll 3 dice and you would choose which one happened. And the art of blocking is all about maximising the number of dice you can roll and the number of blocks you can make. So how do we do that? We do that using assists. So returning to our two blitzers, one against the other, an assist is where a friendly player, so this time the human is blocking the orc. Let's get all these guys out of the way. This is just a fight between two people. Okay, so the human is blocking the orc, and at the moment they are the same strength. So what the humans can do is to bring in an assist, and that adds 1 to the strength. Doesn't matter what the strength of the assisting player is, it always just adds 1. In order to be able to assist, you need to be standing next to the person who is getting blocked. So this human is blocking the orc, so the catcher could assist from there, 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 or there. Any of those places you could provide an assist. So if the humans were ganging up on the orc, then you could have all of those assists in, and that would make the strength 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that would be strength 7, which is more than twice 3. So you roll 3 dice because it's more than twice the strength. So that's the basic, and that's, as a reminder, you can assist from all of those places. So let's just have a quick look at the different ways that those assists can work. You can't assist if you are in another player's tackle zone. So if there was an orc there, this player wouldn't be able to assist against the block. Okay, if this player was here, he would be able to assist because he wouldn't be in this one's tackle zone. Okay. Similarly, if the human was blocking the orc and there was an orc there, he would add 1 to the strength of the orc. And so that would be 2 dice, and the orc player would choose the result, because now the human is weaker than the orc, because the orc has got strength 3 with an extra assist. So the human would roll 2 dice, and the orc would get to choose which one to use. And similarly, the orc can assist the block if he's next to the person who's doing the blocking. Okay, so the orc could assist from there, 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 or there, any of those places. Okay, that's the basic assist. It's worth having a quick look at what happens as a result. So if a pushback is rolled, or in fact a power is rolled, then the person being blocked gets pushed back. So you can be pushed back. You always get 3 choices of which square to be pushed back into. You can be pushed back into that square. Those 3 squares, basically 1, 2, 3. Let's put those out. 1, 2, 3. So if you're blocking a player and it goes straight back, those are the 3 choices. You can also block diagonally. And if you block diagonally, you've got a choice of those 3 squares to go back to. And that's about it, actually. So, because if you block from there, it's basically a horizontal push. So it's either a sort of straight on push, in which case you get those 3 squares, or it's a diagonal one, in which case those are the 3 squares you get to choose. So that is the result, and that's how your basic assists work. Now, the idea of blocking then is to get as many blocks as you can and as good a block as you can. So if we set up a little game scenario here, entirely false situation. Okay, the blitzer is thinking about attacking the orc blitzer. So the human, let's change that. So the thrower is thinking of attacking the blitzer. They've both got strength 3. Okay, so the sensible thing to do for the human would be to bring in a player like that, and then before making the block. So if you can avoid doing 1 dice blocks, if you can make them 2 dice blocks, then that is a huge amount better, and the statistics are so much better for knocking people over. Basically, there's a 1/3 chance of knocking them over, assuming no skills. You've got the defender stumbles and the defender down, both of which are the good results when you're blocking someone. And there's obviously 2 of those out of 6, so that's a probability of 2/6, which is the same as 1/3. If you roll 2 dice, then you only need 1 of those to be a power result. And it actually works out that, he does a little bit of sums in his head, you've got a 20 in 36 chance of knocking them over. And that's equivalent to a 12 in 36. So it's almost twice as likely to knock someone over if you do a 2 dice block than if you do a 1 dice block. And all the probabilities actually are on the Art of Blocking, the original article, which I'll stick on the link at the bottom of the video. So the fundamental thing is to move in and assist before doing a block, if you at all can. Okay, and move actions have no risks attached to them, so you can always just bring someone in, and that's fine to help out with. It's the probabilities change when you start getting block into the equation. And one of the interesting things about Blood Bowl is that a 2 dice block without block is actually better than a 1 dice block with block in terms of it going wrong. So again, shows that making a 2 dice block is a good thing to do. If you have block, then doing a 1 dice block is not the end of the world. So if a blitzer was just hitting an orc lineman, then any result except a skull would be okay for the blitzer, because if he rolls a both down, then the orc goes down because the orc hasn't got a block. If he rolls a push, he gets pushed back. If he rolls any of the star ones, he gets pushed back and knocked over. So if you have block, then doing a 1 dice block is okay. If you don't have block, then doing a 1 dice block becomes quite a risky maneuver. Basically, if you when you become sort of reasonably good at Blood Bowl, 3+ rolls, which is basically what a block without the block skill is, becomes quite a risky thing, because those will fail 1 in 9 times, assuming you have a reroll. And if 1 in 9 of your actions fails, then you're likely to get a sort of risky turnover at some point. So if you can make 2 dice blocks and 2+ rolls as much as possible, then that is a good thing. So let's start at the very sort of beginning of the match, in that when you would set up, let's say the orcs are receiving. So the humans would be fairly likely to put 3 players on the line. I'm going to put a thrower on the line because I haven't got a lineman handy, have I? Let's put another lineman on the line. There we go. Got 3 linemen on the line. That's why they're called linemen. If you are kicking the ball, it's very, very seldom a good idea to put more than 3 on the line. Only put 3 on the line if you can possibly avoid it, because all you're doing, if you put more than 3 on the line, is you're giving up more blocks to your opponent, and that is a bad idea. So let's look at how the orcs should then set up. Your players with block are the best at blocking. So even though Black Orc blockers are called blockers, that's a bit of a misnomer. They don't have block. They are not as good at blocking as blitzers are. They're just a bit stronger. They should really just be called Black Orcs because they are stronger, but they're not as good at blocking. So let's have a look. So what I would like to do is get as many 2 dice blocks as I can to start with. So I would set up something like that. Okay, you're stacking the line as much as possible. You've got your 7 orcs on the line, and the idea of your first turn is to get all 3 of these humans down. Okay, so the blitzer could hit the lineman and would have an assist from this guy. So that would give him strength 3, and an extra 1 is 4. So he would push him. Now, if he knocks him over, all well and good. But if he didn't, he could push him to there, and then he could follow up. Because when you block someone, you can move into their square if you push them backwards. Because then this chappie here, the orc lineman, could block this lineman as well with an assist. And so that would give another 2 dice block. And that's 4 dice on this lineman, which is fairly likely to knock him over. So let's say he's been knocked over. And then you could follow up here. Okay. And then you need to be slightly wary, because actually that choice to follow up might be a bad one. Because if he stays there, then that means that this blitzer can hit the human lineman and can push him along the line again if he doesn't manage to knock him over. So what you need to think about is, if I don't knock this player over, can I maneuver a way in which I can hit them again? Now, one of the most important skills in terms of the blocking battle is guard. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to assume that my Black Orc has got guard. And what guard allows you to do is to assist a block even if you're in someone else's tackle zone. So let's look at this situation here. We've got a Orc lineman, we've got a Black Orc blocker with guard because he's played a few games, he's hurt a few people, he's earned a skill up, and he's chosen guard. And then we've got 2 human linemen here. Now normally this orc wouldn't be able to assist the block because he's in this player's tackle zone. So let's have a look at this orc here blocking this human. Neither of these would be able to assist because they're in each other's tackle zones. But because this person has guard, he can assist the block. So that would mean that this lineman had 2 dice on this lineman or this lineman, because the player with guard can assist both of those blocks. If it was the human player's turn, then again the Black Orc would be able to assist from this. If this person was blocking, so if the human lineman was blocking the Orc lineman, having this player here would make no difference at all, because the Orc would still be able to assist because he's got guard and the human player hasn't got guard. Okay. Whereas if this human lineman was over here and these 2 were blocking each other, that would be a 1 dice block because he would have strength 3, 4 with the assist because he can assist him. He can assist the block because he's standing next to the person being blocked. He can assist because he's standing next to the opponent involved in the block. Basically, if you're standing next to the opponent who's involved in the block, then you can you can assist the block. For me, the other fundamental skill that gets involved in the blocking game is frenzy. Now, some players come with frenzy, such as rat ogres, witch elves, Norse berserkers, and most players can get frenzy as a skill up. And what frenzy allows you to do is to throw a second block. In fact, you have to throw a second block if you only push the player back in the first place. So let's get rid of all these players, and let's say that our human blitzer is skilled up and he's got frenzy. Okay, it's actually a really good first skill, I think, for a human blitzer. Not necessarily for a new player, but once you've got a bit of experience, I'm a big fan of frenzy on a human blitzer because it opens up a few different opportunities for you. So what would happen here is that the blitzer is blocking the orc. Normally they would just have strength 3, so that would be 1 dice, but they've got the assist here, so that gives the extra dice. So he rolls 2 dice and he gets a pushback and a both down. Let's change that to pushback and a skull. So he's going to get a pushback and a skull. Doesn't want to choose the skull because that would mean he'd fall over. So he gets to push him back. Now he could push him to any of those 3 squares. Okay, the most sensible one to push to is that one, because then he follows up and then he gets another block. And now this lineman here is still in the tackle zone of this orc, and so the second dice again is with 2 dice. Okay, and then he might knock him down or he might get to push him back again. But basically what you want to do is to hit him and then be able to hit him again with 2 dice. So if you hit him and moved him to there, the second one would be 1 dice. Now, one of the reasons I said it's not for the new player is because you need to watch out for the frenzy trap, and that looks a bit like this. Let's set it up like set it up like that. Okay. Now, this frenzy player is hitting the orc lineman. Okay, all very well and good. Okay, let's stick another orc in the mix just to make it really clear. Now, when he blocks, at the moment, I'll take him out again, sorry. When he blocks, at the moment it's 2 dice, okay, because he's got an assist. Neither of these two are involved in the block because they are not adjacent to the opposing player. So the 2 orcs are not adjacent to the human, so they can't assist the block. He gets a pushback. Let's say he rolls double push. He's got a choice now. He can either push him to there, and then he has to follow up. Or he can push him to there, and then he has to follow up and block him again. It doesn't actually make any difference in this situation, because it's bad news either way. Because here, the blitzer has to do another block against the lineman, and the blitzer has 1 helper, so he has 1 assist, giving him strength 4. Whereas the orc has 2 assists. Both of these players are adjacent to the opposing player, so they can both help. So that gives the orc strength 3, 4, 5, and the human has got strength 3, 4. So this time it would be 2 dice, and that could have easily gone wrong. Happened not to go wrong this time, but it could easily have gone wrong because it was 2 dice and it was the choice of the orc player. And that's called the frenzy trap. And it's something that experienced players can actually set up against not less experienced players, but it's also just something that happens in the game sometimes. You sometimes get an accidental frenzy trap, and sometimes you get a frenzy trap that your opponent has deliberately left for you. We're now going to move the action to the edge of the pitch and look at crowd surfing, or pushing a player into the crowd, known as crowd surfing. I'm not sure if it actually says crowd surfing in the rulebook, but it's certainly what it's called a lot of the time. The basics of the crowd push. Let's say a black orc is pushing a blitzer. Okay, the black orc is stronger. Okay, and so it's got 2 dice. Not that it particularly matters for this situation. When the black orc smacks the blitzer, he gets to push him backwards. So let's say he rolls that, and he's going to push him backwards. So normally the choice of squares he gets are those 3 squares there, all of which are in the crowd. So the blitzer goes into the crowd and has to take a straight injury roll. So pushing the player into the crowd is very effective because it's a straight injury roll, but also even if it's just a stunned result, it means that the player is off the pitch for the rest of the drive and has to go into the reserve spot. Now, the trick with crowd pushing is that you have to keep the player on the pitch if you can. So here the Black Orcs is hitting the blitzer. The choice of squares are those 3. 1, 2, 3. 2 of those are in the crowd, but the one on the pitch, you have to choose the one on the pitch if you can. You can't choose to push a player into the crowd. But what you can do, if you're cunning, is you can spot that there's this lineman over here who hasn't done anything yet. And so the lineman can run in, 2, 3, 4. The lineman can run in, stand there, so that then when the Black Orc hits the blitzer, you've got 1, 2, 3 squares as a choice, but now the crowd is a preference to the player on the pitch. Okay, you have to push him into the crowd instead of pushing him into the pitch, so that would happen into the crowd. Okay, the only problem with doing that is that then this chap is quite close and prone to being crowd surfed himself, so you might need to do something like putting another player there to protect him a little bit, but that's well worth it if you've got another player off the pitch. We talked about frenzy a little bit earlier, and frenzy and crowd pushing makes things extremely fun. So let's give all the blitzers frenzy just for the moment. Okay, and you can get a lovely situation that looks a bit like this. Let's have those 2 players back there, and we've got this. Let's have this starting situation. Okay, now it looks like that player is reasonably safe. Looks like the human blitzer is reasonably safe. He's not safe because he's got a load of orcs around him, and orcs are scary, but he looks as if he's staying on the pitch. Not so much, because this blitzer can blitz and goes 1, 2, and then can blitz this player to there, and then can blitz him again because he's got frenzy. Okay, and then what I would do is bring this lineman in here, 1, 2, 3. And the reason I've done that, if you think about it, is that if this person, this orc blitzer, has now got a block against this blitzer, can push him to there, now it's only a 1 dice. So what you need to do sometimes is to anticipate where the second block is going to be. Put the player in for the assist on the second block, anticipating what's going to happen, because then this one can block to there and then push him into the crowd. So what we had there was this situation. Okay, I moved this one into here. The blitzer came in, 1, 2, first block, second block, and then the orc blitzer, first block, second block into the crowd. So combining frenzy is an absolutely brilliant thing to do, and one of the best teams for that is the Norse, because they've got up to 5 players who start with frenzy, and all the other players start with block, and so you can give them frenzy and it's still fairly safe. The final situation I'm going to look at with the art of blocking is what's called the chain push, which is where you push a player into another player because all of the squares that they could be pushed into are taken. So that's the situation I'm going to use in a minute, but I'll move that one away a second and just explain how that works. So it's a bit like crowd pushing in that when you block a player, so let's have him there and him there. So the orc lineman is going to block the human blitzer, and let's say he rolls a pushback. Normally you'd have a choice of 3 squares to be pushed back into. One of those squares is occupied, so you have to push to an empty square if you can. So you wouldn't be allowed to push into the orc blitzer because you've got a choice of empty squares. It's only when all the squares are full, and it doesn't matter if they're full with if they're filled with friendly or the enemy players. If they're filled, then you can choose which one to push into as normal. So the Orc lineman could push into the blitzer and could choose to push here, here or here. Now so if he pushed this one, that would be like this one being pushed back from this square. So he would have a choice of those 3 squares to go into. If he chose to push into the thrower, he would have a choice of those 3 squares to go into. And so what would happen, say the lineman blocks the blitzer, gets pushed back, pushes into the thrower, that is the situation. And this one gets a choice whether to follow up or not. And so the thrower could have gone to that square, or that square, and then the blitzer would have gone to there. Same applies if the blitzer was being knocked over, and that's what's called a chain push. Similarly, if he chose to push him into the human lineman, and that's absolutely fine, it doesn't matter if they're friendly or foe, then you get those 3 choices there because the human lineman is being pushed diagonally. Let's look at how that could work in a tactical situation. So I've got the human catcher, and this is the first time we've used the ball in this little video. So there's the human catcher has got the ball, and the orcs would like to get it off him. Okay, the orcs have already blitzed for some reason to get into this situation, but then he spots a bonus situation. We've got the black orc, strength 4, human blitzer, strength 3, and surrounded by players. Chain pushing becomes really effective when you get a big mass of players all doing stuff together. And so if you're playing someone who's really experienced and they sit with a furrowed brow for like 30 seconds to a minute at the beginning of the turn thinking, oh, this could work, and then this could work, and then this could work, it's time to start worrying because they're probably thinking about a chain push. So the black orc hits the blitzer. What's he going to roll? Let's actually roll some dice. He rolled a push. He rolled 2 pushes. This is good news because that's all he wanted. The black orc has a choice of 3 squares to push the human blitzer back into. All of those 3 squares are occupied. That's a really bad example. So let's say all 3 squares are occupied, and so he can choose to push into this one, or this one. He's going to choose this blitzer here, and he gets a choice to push the blitzer into any of those 3 squares. So then the black orc hits the blitzer, who then pushes into this blitzer, and the blitzer can then be chosen to be pushed to there. And then the blitzer, because he hasn't done anything yet, because being pushed back like that doesn't count as one of your actions for the turn, the blitzer is free to move and free to do a 2 dice block on the catcher. Remembering that neither of these players can assist the block because they're both of these tackle zones. So that would be strength 3 against strength 2, and the catcher might well be toast. Although the catcher does have the dodge skill, so could go either way. Let's see what happens. Both down, blitzer has block, catcher's down, ball scatters. Good news. And that's the tactical use of the chain push. One of the most tactical ways to use the chain push is in the 1-turn touchdowns, and you can see an introductory video on that on the YouTube channel. So I'll leave it there. That's a fairly brief introduction to the art of blocking. Do go away, do read the article, and then just observe some games, watch some of my games that I've done on here, watch some games on Fumble where you can see really clearly what's going on between the different blocking. I've done some with commentary on where I explain what I'm thinking and what my opponent is sometimes thinking as well, and just think about the blocking. It's the most important part of the game. Even if you're playing a sort of throwy passy team, you still need to think about the blocking and how to get those 2 dice blocks, because they're how you get the ball off the opponent.